The dust of Persia hung thick in the air as Alexander's army advanced through the heart of Asia. The once mighty empire of the great King Darius III lay broken behind them, its soldiers scattered, its generals slain, and its pride shattered at Gaugamela. Yet Alexander was not satisfied. Victory in battle was not enough. He wanted the symbol of Persian power itself. Babylon, the jewel of Mesopotamia, the city of kings and gods, awaited him. The march toward Babylon was unlike any before. Instead of the resistance he had expected, Alexander found open roads and silent cities. Messengers came from Babylon bearing white flags, offering surrender. The priests and nobles of the city had decided that defiance would mean ruin. They had heard what happened to those who resisted Alexander. But more than fear, there was awe. Stories of his victories had spread across the east. Tales of the young Macedonian who never lost a battle, who led his men like Achilles reborn. When the city gates of Babylon finally opened, it was not with blood but with celebration. The people lined the streets, throwing flowers and incense as Alexander entered. The air was thick with the scent of oil and myrrh. Musicians played flutes, dancers performed in honor of the new king, and the priests of Marduk came forward with gifts. For the first time in his long campaign, Alexander entered a city not as a conqueror, but as a liberator and a god in mortal form. Babylon was unlike anything the Greeks had ever seen. Its great walls stretched for miles, its temples rose like mountains of stone, and the mighty Euphrates River ran through its heart. The Hanging Gardens, one of the wonders of the world, still flourished with lush greenery. To Alexander, it was as if he had walked into a dream of the gods themselves. He immediately ordered that the city be treated with respect. There was to be no looting, no destruction. He knew that Babylon was more than a city. It was a symbol. By controlling it, he controlled the heart of the Persian world. He entered the great temple of Marduk, the chief god of Babylon, and offered sacrifices. The priests, in awe, declared him chosen by their gods. It was a moment of transformation. Alexander, once the avenger of Greece against Persia, was now becoming king of Asia. In Babylon, he rested his army for weeks. He rewarded his soldiers with gold and honors, knowing that their loyalty had carried him across continents. He opened the royal treasury of Darius, its vaults filled with unimaginable wealth, gold, silver, jewels, and silks from every corner of the known world. Yet he did not waste it in excess. Instead, he paid his men well and began rebuilding his vision of a unified empire. But Alexander's gaze did not stop at Babylon. Beyond it lay Susa, another great Persian capital, where even greater treasures awaited. It was said that the palace of Susa glittered with gold furniture, jeweled pillars, and silver thrones. More importantly, it held the royal archives and the ancient insignia of Persian kingship, the proof of dominion over Asia. Alexander marched swiftly towards Susa. Like Babylon, the city surrendered without a fight. The satraps, Persian governors, welcomed him with gifts, offering allegiance in exchange for mercy. The gates opened wide, and Alexander entered in full royal splendor, wearing a cloak of purple and gold. Inside the royal palace of Susa, he found the treasures of generations. The hoard was beyond belief, over 40,000 talents of gold and silver. A fortune so vast it took thousands of animals and carts to carry it away. But Alexander was not blinded by wealth. He understood that what he had captured was more than riches. It was legitimacy. By taking the royal capital, he was claiming the right to rule Persia itself. In Susa, Alexander began to show a new side of his vision. He did not destroy Persian culture. He sought to merge it with Greek civilization. He kept Persian administrators in place, respected local customs, and even began adopting elements of Persian dress. Many of his men grumbled, saying their king was becoming too Eastern, too distant from his Macedonian roots. But Alexander believed he was creating something greater, a single empire where East and West could stand as one. He held grand ceremonies in the palace halls, seating Greek and Persian nobles together. He married Persian princesses into his court and encouraged his officers to do the same. To many, it seemed strange. To Alexander, it was destiny. While in Susa, he also prepared for his final march eastward to Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of Persia and the seat of its ancient kings. Unlike Babylon and Susa, Persepolis would not surrender easily. But that story, of its flames and downfall, would come later. For now, Susa marked a turning point. Alexander had achieved what no Greek before him had dreamed possible. The cities that had once symbolized the greatness of Persia now bowed to him. The empire of Darius, which had ruled from the Mediterranean to the Indus for centuries, was now in his hands. In the evenings, Alexander walked through the gardens of Susa, thinking of how far he had come, from the hills of Macedon to the palaces of Asia. He was only 25, yet he ruled more of the world than any man before him. The stars reflected in the pools of the palace as he thought of his father, Philip, and his teacher, Aristotle. They had taught him to dream of greatness, but even they could not have imagined this. Still, there was restlessness in his heart. Conquest had been his life. Peace felt unnatural. He began planning his next campaigns to the east, toward India, and beyond. He spoke of lands where the sun rose from the sea, of nations no Greek had ever seen. His generals watched him with a mix of admiration and fear. They knew that Alexander's ambition had no end. Yet, in Babylon and Susa, he also showed his greatness not only as a conqueror, but as a ruler. He rebuilt temples, restored local religions, and treated defeated enemies with unexpected mercy. Even the Persians, who once called him a destroyer, began to accept him as their rightful king. His image was carved alongside the old Persian gods, and his name spoken in their prayers. Alexander's dream was no longer just to conquer, it was to unite. In his mind, there would be no more Greek or Persian, only one people under one ruler. But such dreams came with a price. Among his soldiers, whispers began to grow louder. They feared he was losing himself in the world he had conquered. As the months passed in Susa, Alexander began to change. He adopted Persian court rituals, demanding that visitors bow before him in the Persian custom of proskynesis. Alexander argued that he was no longer just a Macedonian king. He was ruler of the world. Tensions rose, but his authority was absolute. None dared challenge him openly. Those who had followed him since youth could see the transformation. Their king had become a legend, and legends no longer lived as men. When spring returned, Alexander prepared to leave Susa. His next destination would be Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of Persia, the city built by Darius the Great and Xerxes, kings who had once sent their armies against Greece. For Alexander, taking Persepolis would not only complete his conquest, it would be revenge for the burning of Athens more than a century earlier. Before departing, he called his troops together in the great courtyard of Susa. He addressed them not as soldiers, but as brothers who had carried him through storms and blood. He spoke of how far they had come, of how the gods themselves had blessed their journey. He promised that soon their glory would reach beyond the limits of the earth itself. As the sun rose over the palace, Alexander mounted his horse, Bucephalus, and turned east. The drums of war began once more. Behind him lay Babylon, peaceful and loyal. Around him stretched Susa, rich and glittering, and ahead waited Persepolis, proud and defiant. Alexander's conquest of Babylon and Susa had made him the master of the Persian Empire. But deep within his heart, he knew this was not the end. For Alexander the Great, there could never be an end, only another horizon waiting to be crossed.